Hi, this is Bill the Adjuster, and it is flood season. They're happening everywhere. The flood insurance program, National Flood Insurance Program, is really the only place you can buy direct flood insurance. There are some secondary markets that will write additional flood, but generally they're still going to force you to get the first portion of your flood policy through the National Flood Insurance Program, NFIP. And the important part that you know here, this is a program. This is not really the same as like a homeowner policy. So a couple of things you should know about this program, and I emphasize the word program because it's really not a typical insurance policy. It has very rigid rules. It doesn't flex or bend to modern needs. So first of all, personal property contents in a basement are almost no coverage. There's coverage for a few elements in a basement, but basically if you have a basement finished, filled with stuff, there's almost no coverage for that personal property. If you have a finished basement, there's almost no coverage for the finishes, the carpeting, floor coverings, hardwood floors, paint, finished wall. The policy is really specific on finished basements to where it basically covers for unfinished drywall and the utilities that run the house, the electric, the furnace, and things like that. But the basement itself, if you have a finished basement and an NFIP claim, you're going to get probably 10 cents on a dollar for the value of that loss. So a basement is really any room that is below grade on all four sides. So if you have to step out of the basement up, it's a basement. Even if you have a walkout, you have patio door out the back of your basement, but it's a 2-inch step up to the grade, they're going to consider that a basement. And they're highly vulnerable to flooding, which really limits the amount of coverage you have on that level. So make sure you understand if you're in a basement according to the way National Flood describes it. Secondly, this process is incredibly strict. It's a government program. It is regulated by the government. It's really difficult to beat them. Going to court against them is really difficult. There's a 60-day hard proof requirement, meaning a proof of loss must be filed within 60 days of the flood. 61 days, they may never pay your claim and they'll close it. So it's really difficult. They do extend it occasionally when there's tons of floods out there, but the flooding I've seen so far, there's been no extensions. So you need to get that proof of loss filed. You gather all the prior loss documentation you can find. If you ever had a flood there before, all the repairs, all the contracts, all the payments, you will need that. They're going to ask for all of that. Anything that has a cord or a plug. So if it's wired into the house, your stove, your central air conditioner, your furnace, or a power cord, and it's part of the building or a high-end content item, and you have contents coverage, you need a model number and serial number. So the refrigerators, the dishwashers, everything plugged in that got wet will need those numbers. They track it very carefully. So again, without the numbers, you may not get paid for your central air system because you need to show the model and serial number. You can see what happens. Somebody's air conditioner outside gets damaged, it's put at the curb, somebody else brings it over and claims it. With the model number and tracking of this, they can keep that from occurring and keep fraud down to a minimum. It is not a homeowner policy. So homeowner policies are meant to keep people happy. They're meant to keep you as a happy homeowner. So there isn't things in the policy like matching. There isn't great little endorsements to make your life better. Pre-loss condition is really not their goal. It's more like we'll put you back into a house, but we're not really concerned about how nice it was. I'm being a little scary here, but it really isn't a high-end policy and is not really meant for that. There's a $250,000 limit on a residential policy on the building coverage, which automatically reduces the amount you could ever receive. Residential homeowner claims hit $250,000 regularly. Contents limits of $100,000 is the most you can buy. And most of these are ACV, meaning they're paid at a depreciated value. There's no additional living expense. You might be out of your house from a flood for months with no reimbursement coverage whatsoever from a flood policy. Now, it's certainly better to have one than not, but just so you know, this is not a homeowner policy. Again, it's a program. So it's certainly better than not being covered. I tell people all the time, if you pay off your mortgage, you want to make sure you maintain your flood insurance because no one's going to remind you to get it. We locally have some floods here that made national news. People have recently paid off their houses and dropped their flood insurance because they'd never flooded there before. Well, the mortgage company knew something you didn't, that there was a chance. And if that's the case, you end up with no coverage whatsoever, and these people are getting $75,000 to $100,000 bills to fix the first floor of their home that had just a few inches of water in it. So you need to understand you need flood insurance. If you don't have a mortgage, it's your responsibility to get it. You do need to be patient through this process. Remember, when everybody has a flood, they all have it at the same time. So the process is this big bottleneck. It's like a boa constrictor eating, right? It's all in the system at the same time, moving down the snake. So don't think about losing or missing your proof of loss requirement. That is a 60-day requirement, needs to be filed within 60 days. Work with your adjuster to make sure it's in and it's been received. Even if supplements need to be filed, they can be filed forever almost, as long as you keep working with National Flood on getting the rebuild done. But that initial proof of loss needs to be filed timely. If it's beyond the 60 days, you run the chance of that claim being denied for breach of that contractual duty. Hopefully this was helpful. Hopefully you don't have a flood. If you do, you can send a question to smartclaim@metropa.com. Again, I'm Bill the Adjuster. Thanks very much for being on the call, and have a great day.